Good evening, traders. This is Krishna Joshi here with 7 Points Capital, and I'm going to bring you today's trader takeaways. Interesting day in SPICE. We obviously broke about the 280 after a really long time, after at least almost 4 months, and we've been holding about 280 since then. So we broke that level that we've been watching, that range that we've been talking about for the last 4 months. Now we finally above that, and the good news is that SPICE never really even got close to 280. It held above it, well above it, and so we broke through the 280 yesterday. 280.35s were holding yesterday midday, kind of finished strong on the day, and coming in pre-market, there wasn't really much weakness, so it got bought up and we closing again at the highs. So that is something that we're watching out, obviously, along with a few other stock specific action. Interesting day in terms of the companies announcing earnings were like the biggest airlines, one of the biggest airlines, United, one of the biggest railroad companies, CSX, and one of the biggest investment banks, which is Morgan Stanley. So that way we had a lot of volume, a lot of action in those stock specific names. But if you look at SPICE, absolutely dead, like 37 million shares in the beginning of the earnings season, not the best picture that it paints. So let's jump into individual names. Netflix, no one can miss that because it's day 2 on Netflix, and the stock was ended up trading Netflix yesterday, obviously shorted around the 381 area, had a good nice cover in the 376. So I was definitely watching that range because it ended up it closed at the 382. After as I'm watching it, 380 is holding pre-market 382. So I definitely knew that there was a lot of weightage to that 5-6 point range that Netflix had been trading. So the moment it broke that and came right back up, that is where I was looking for a long position in that 375-76 area, with my target obviously initially being 382. But the move was pretty sudden, and then once I got a nice cover in it, I was quick to take my profits in that one. I'm gonna show you Netflix executions in just a second. There you go, let me pull it up. So around this 1050 area, once it broke through, came right back up, it felt like this could push back with the SPICE. The SPICE were also kind of bottoming out around that same time, and it made a quick push into that 380 area, and just threw out my order there and got a nice execution. Ended up being a good quick scalp for 4 points. Could have definitely squeezed it for more because this was my initial price target when I got in the position. But at this point I'm thinking if this goes back to 375, 376, which is almost 3.5-4 points from here, I can get back in versus looking for 2 more points and giving back all of those gains. So was a quick cover. I would have liked to stay in it, but decent execution, I would say, overall. But let's jump into other names. Specifically what was working was Morgan Stanley was pretty much sharp. I had a few short setups in the morning, did shake me out from those. So yeah, right around here. So this was my this was my short position in Morgan Stanley around the 75 area. It did shake me out about the VWAP. Wasn't really leaning on the VWAP to begin with, but this was also around the time when Powell was speaking, and when his testimony was going on, markets looked good. The banks and the XLF was obviously very strong. So ended up taking a quick loss on this one. What I did not like was it did sell off much right after that. So this is where I tried to get short again. Could have had much better execution. This is what I felt like when I knew that 51s were holding and really not able to break. Should have had a good short on this one, but I left it alone pretty much for the rest of the day. I did not like the action in this. I did not have a good read on it, so I ended up leaving the stock alone. United had pretty good action. I could not Surprisingly, I did not trade it. This is usually one of my favorites. Last earnings, I was actively trading it because the stock was down 10%. Um, Another reason to just trade it and have a feel for it. But today it opened really strong, gave me a good chance to get in here, but the spreads were wide and the pre-market action, the pre-market volume was really low. So this was about 300,000 shares on the day, and that did not give me a lot of confidence to jump right in because the stock's gapping up. Spies were kind of weak and had a small minor dip right off the open. So hesitated in the morning, missed UAL. Uh, but I did have two decent trades. One of them is CSX, the railroads company. So what I saw was around the view up 6750 was holding. So here you can see it was trying to mess around with the 6750 for a while. Um, it goes up to the 75s, comes right back up. This is where I got a short position, but it did shake me out a lot because I did not feel very confident about the push up. Comes back down, tries to break through the 50, goes down to like I think 40, 41, and then comes right back up to 65. So on the way down, I ended up covering it. Could have been a really good short. But I saw similar action at that 67.25 area. The offer was holding. It would wipe out the offer for everything on the dark pools exchanges, flip up to 26 and come right back down. So when it did that twice and then I felt like the 25 bid held, I just bought the 26s instantly. I wasn't risking a lot. It was more like a reactive trade as to looking at the time and sales, looking at the tape. So it was more like a level 2 play instead of a chart play for me. And I just got out, I had my orders out into the previous resistance area from the morning, which was the 75 area. Ended up getting a cover on it. It set up again, and this was an early take definitely because I couldn't get a feel for how strong this was given the weakness, given the sell-off in CSX. And one last name that I want to look into is Abbott. ABT had earnings as well, so I had two good trades in it and one shakeout. So right off the morning when I felt like the 64.90 area was holding, I ended up getting a good short on it around the 75-77 area and a pretty good cover on it as well. So in the morning, let me right. So looking at going bar by bar on this one, I was looking at the consolidation, looking at how it was struggling at that 85 area, 85, 88, 90 area. So just below that, instead of jumping right around here, I let it see if it wanted to break the 80s. It did. It comes back down, tries to fake around. So it's buying the offer, flipping up a few cents, and then selling the bids, and then going down to 77, 78. So it was interesting. I knew that my risk reward here was risking about 88. I had a decent price on it, and the cover was going to be in the lows of the day. So the pre-market lows was 64.30, the pre-market area that I was watching at, and ended up going through it and gave me a decent cover on it. I did try to short again once it set up, and it did shake me out there. Even though my stop was 91, I felt like this had strong momentum. Does it want to like go right through it? And because the upside above 64.90, I was expecting a lot of slippage. So I had much more size here because I felt like the stock's kind of steadying down. This was one shakeout, got involved again, much lower though. And I felt like the momentum in the spies were kind of shifting all throughout. So spies are making gradually inching higher. And so were my other stocks, which was CSX, had bottomed out and coming up. I already had put on a long position in that, short UVXY. So at this point, I'm really thinking that if this breaks down and if it cannot take the lows, I think this might keep hovering around the 85 to 65 to 85 range, and which is pretty much what it kept doing. It did go lower here, but ended up taking a quick cover on it. So with the spies kind of doing this, we do end up trading a lot of wicks. When the market started grinding higher, ended up taking small position in wicks. Got a feel for it. I knew that the markets are kind of bottoming out and trying to turn up, and this is where I got a good cover. A lot of divergence I saw in the wicks and the spice, so definitely this one's going to be on my radar. Uh, because if you look at the UVXY on the daily, it is trading at the lows. So it's back to the 9 area. 905 was an important level I was watching from the pre-market, and we'll keep that on radar. Quite a few interesting names after hours: IBM, American Express, KMI, one of the big pipeline companies. So it's going to be a busy day, and we're looking at these multiple stocks announcing earnings. It's going to be a busy one, and hopefully Spice pick up volume like we wanted to. Thanks for watching, guys, and thank you for the feedback. Keep liking, sharing, subscribing, and feel free to put in any comments. Once again, this is Krishna Joshi with 7 Points Capital.